Okay, we're on the podcast now with Amber from MetPro. We're going to answer some questions sent in from listeners. We got all kinds of great questions. Amber, welcome back to the MTA podcast.
Thank you. It's so good to be back. I always have a good time with you guys.
Yeah, I know for both Trevor and I, working with MetPro was so foundational for just a lot of things, including body recomposition, better energy, improving in our running, so many things. It's the way I eat to this day, and I just really feel like it's going to be so beneficial for our listeners out there.
I agree. I mean, training for a race is no small feat. And I have a lot of respect for those that do because I'm not a long distance runner. I know how to fuel runners, but I myself do not enjoy running at all, except for sprinting. So I just hope the listeners can only imagine how much more benefits they can get when they really pair the nutrition and training together. I always like to use the metaphor of our body is like a vehicle with the right fuel. It performs well. If you're putting the cheapest fuel in your tank, you're not going to feel that great. And the training is kind of like the maintenance. And if you're not maintaining your vehicle, it's going to decline over time. So if you think of your nutrition and training in that way, it just really sets you up for success and better performance. So I'm really excited for this.
And if you're not putting enough fuel in the tank, you're not going to go anywhere.
100%. You're going to be puttering down the road eventually.
Coasting to the shoulder,
That is right.
which I'm sure we've all experienced at one time or another during a long run or a race,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I can't vouch for that, but I have experienced low energy in the tank in a hard workout or when I'm sprinting. So it kind of goes both ways, whether you're strength training or running, you need fuel, you need the maintenance.
Definitely. We solicited questions from our email newsletter. Big thanks to everyone that sent in a question. We have a couple questions about weight loss. The first one is from Jennifer.
She says, I'm a 41-year-old vegan female runner. I feel like I'm doing all the training, but not able to take off the weight. Help. Weight loss and training for races. Can you do both at the same time?
Yeah, this is such a good question because I have so many of my running clients that want to achieve both. And it's absolutely possible to do both simultaneously, but it also just depends on how much time you have before a race. If you have less than a month away, I wouldn't necessarily recommend intentionally focusing on weight loss. I would say that you need to prioritize your performance over anything. Otherwise, you might sacrifice that in the race if you've been, in a calorie deficit for too long and haven't had much time to kind of build up your glycogen storage before the race. And I would also note that fat loss will likely be at a slower pace if performance goals are also being worked on. So I wouldn't anticipate, like a really quick weight loss pace, which we don't recommend that anyways. I always like for my clients to hit half a pound to 2 pounds per week. And for my runners, I usually like to stick closer to that lower end of the range. And then to note on the vegan protein side of that question, protein is important for recovery and metabolic health. So I would encourage you to aim for at least 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. I know there's a lot of confusion on whether it should be per pound or per ideal body weight, but I always like to convert to kilograms and use that as a calculator. And then it's important to focus on nutrient dense protein sources like your beans, legumes, tofu, nuts and seeds, and possibly even a high quality plant protein powder just to ensure that you're getting adequate amounts and getting enough complete proteins because some of those animal sources, or I'm sorry, your plant sources won't be complete proteins. And what that means is that they house all of the essential amino acids that your body needs. And since you'll be running quite a bit, you'll be burning a lot of calories. So you'll want to create a slight calorie deficit for fat loss while also ensuring that you're getting enough calories through to provide enough energy for your workouts. And also, while you're focusing on fat loss, you'll want to make sure that you're doing enough strength training to prevent as much lean muscle mass loss as possible while you're burning fat. Because if you're in a deficit, you're burning thousands of calories each week with all of your training. If you're not strength training, a lot of that weight loss you're going to see is going to come from your muscles.
So basically, you're saying anytime you're looking at the goals of performance and fat loss at the same time. You really have to prioritize your protein and strength training and not getting
100%.
into too much of a calorie deficit.
100%. Because if you go in too far of a deficit, you'll definitely feel it in your training. You'll probably have low energy. You might have signs of low blood sugar, especially before or during or even right after your long, intense training sessions. And then another point that I like to make for my fat loss clients that are also runners or athletes in any form, don't get caught up on the scale because it can be very deceiving for us with more muscularity, higher training. You want to track those non-scale victories as well to make sure that your body composition is changing in the right way. If your body comp is changing but the scale's not moving, that's okay. The scale is going to fluctuate. Your weight loss journey will never be linear, especially as you're training. And I always like to give my clients the example of if you lose a pound of fat, but you gain a pound of muscle, that scale will look the exact same, but your body will not. So
And your
just
body
keep that
won't
in
feel
mind.
the same either. You'll feel way better with
100%.
more muscle.
100%. And you'll be able to burn more calories just by being more metabolically active with the muscle mass. So that's always a good thing too. You can eat more.
Yes. Now I know when I first came to MetPro, and in the beginning I had about 35 extra pounds of fat that I wanted to lose. And so my coach said, we can have it all, but we can't have it all at the same time. And so she said, what is your primary goal? Do you want to focus on performance or do you want to focus on this fat loss? And I was like, I need to focus on the fat loss. I've got a couple of races on the calendar, but I'm not trying to PR. I just want to complete them. And I really want to work on this body recomposition. And so that's what we did. And of course, as the fat came off, as I got stronger, then the PRs also started coming as well. So
Mhm.
that was really helpful for me to have that perspective.
Right, 100%. And sometimes you do really have to prioritize one or the other. You can't really do them both at the same time, but if you have enough time before your race or event, you can definitely make both happen within that time frame.
Okay, here's a popular subject, GLP-1s. Here's a question from Crystal.
She says, I'm thinking of going on a GLP-1 for weight loss. I hear the meds really curb a person's appetite. What can I do to make sure I'm getting enough nutrition for my running?
Yeah, I really love this question from Crystal because GLP-1s are such a hot topic right now. And I don't see them going anywhere for a long time, maybe not ever. And it's such an appealing aspect to help with weight loss. But I do think it's important to really plan ahead and ensure that you can maintain the necessary diet and lifestyle changes to help with progress, especially as a runner. You don't want to start taking that medication and then not be able to sustain your workouts or your performance. And it often does reduce your appetite. So you want to prioritize protein to help with muscle loss. You want nutrient dense foods to also help keep you full, but also provide enough energy through carbs. Um, Incorporating strength training is also really key to helping to minimize that muscle loss because what they're showing in a lot of the research is that up to a third of the weight that most of these people are using on GLP-1s is coming from muscle mass. And our goal, especially if you're an athlete, is to minimize that muscle loss as much as possible, even though small amounts will be inevitable when you're trying to lose body fat. You just want to keep it to the bare minimum. So the protein is important, strength training is also essential. And then I've heard a lot of people reporting that they just have a hard time eating solid foods, so I always recommend smoothies or shakes to help meet your protein needs. If you're able to eat things like Greek yogurt or oatmeal, things that are just easy to go down and digest, those can be really helpful. Um, and then with GLP-1s, it also slows down your gastric emptying. So it makes you full very quickly because that food is exiting your stomach at a much slower pace. So it's really important that you're testing out any fueling strategies well in advance of your race. And this also puts you at risk for dehydration. So you want to be even more mindful of your water and electrolyte intake to maintain proper hydration.
So, do you guys at MetPro, do you guys work with people on GLP-1s?
Yes, we have a quite a big number of clients on GLP-1s and that number is steadily growing. I know personally, I probably have 7 to 10 clients that are on GLP-1s right now.
So they're probably on the medication and then come to you guys.
Yes, 9 times out of 10. I do have a client that I've been working with for a little over a year now. She's a year postpartum. She was really struggling. And so that was something that she talked with her doctor about. She started the medication about 3 months ago, and that really helped ignite her progress. So I do think that there is a essential role for medications like this for those that have literally tried everything, and diet, exercise, lifestyle changes aren't helping, and there are some genetic aspects that go into it as well. And so this just really helped her get started. Now she's seeing the weight loss that we were seeing before, because she worked with me 2 years ago and saw great results. After having a baby, that hormonal shift really impacted the way that her body was able to prioritize fat burning. So the GLP-1 meds did help with that. But she's realized how important it is to keep up with the nutrition and training, because as soon as she slacks off, she starts eating junk food and she fills up very quickly. So she's not able to get in as much nutritious food.
Okay, so here's a question too, and we don't necessarily have to leave this in, but I'm just curious. Do we know much about like the long-term side effects, and particularly like what does it do to your metabolism long term? These medications.
Yeah, so the studies are showing that it does have a negative impact on metabolism long term, and not only the metabolic aspects, but they're seeing a decrease in bone mineral
Mm.
density. And for women, especially once they go through menopause, like they already lose bone mineral density at a quicker rate. Men, once their testosterone drops, that impacts bone mineral density as well. And so that's something to definitely take into consideration, because bone mineral density is so important. We don't think about this now, especially us younger generations. But once we get older, it's super easy to fracture your bones or have an injury, and it could be related to the decrease in bone density. So, the more you can maintain that by strength training, eating a nutrient dense diet that has enough vitamin D, calcium, you also want vitamin C in there. All of those aspects play a role in your bone density. And then they're also showing that there's so much muscle mass that's lost while on these medications, especially long term, that it's just a little bit harder to get that back, especially for women that are in menopause. We know that building muscle is a little bit more challenging during that stage of life. And when you add something that's causing rapid weight loss, it just makes that challenge even harder.
Yeah. Okay. Well, appreciate that. Let's move on to meal timing. Here's a question from Elaine. She says, my biggest nutritional struggle is living in a big city, New York City, and being very social, even with running groups, which means eating out a lot. My other question would be how to time meals, i.e., bigger meals in the morning or in the evening. So, yeah, when do you eat that big meal? Any thoughts on meal timing for Elaine?
Yes, meal timing can be really important, and it can be really beneficial if you find the right meal timing. And of course, it depends on so many different factors, such as your lifestyle, your work schedule, your training schedule. All of those things go in. But for some people, a larger meal might be beneficial. One or two larger meals might be helpful. But what I find to be most useful is having similar sized meals throughout the day, maybe having one or two snacks thrown in there as well, just to help with blood sugar regulation and to help with portion size. If you're having a really large meal, especially if it's higher on in the carb section, you might be causing your blood sugar to be thrown out off. And when that's thrown off, your body's not able to prioritize fat burning or having an efficient metabolism. Your body then shifts priority to stabilizing blood sugar. So the more you can focus on having, maybe smaller or moderate sized meals more frequently throughout the day, that just helps keep you in a better blood sugar balance throughout the entire day.
And that might help with the issue of going out to eat a lot, because sometimes if you are starving, you're super hungry, you go and maybe kind of get out of hand what you're ordering. Everything looks good and you want to try everything. But if you are having those
Yep.
regular meals and snacks, then hopefully you're not going to be so starving, and you can make a kind of a conscious, maybe predetermined decision about what you want to order that are going to fit within your nutrition goals.
Exactly. We've all been there. We show up to a restaurant, we are so hungry that we will literally just eat the menu if we could. So it is important to eat something to keep your blood sugar well stabilized. And I get this question from clients a lot. They're like, "Well, I know I'm going out to dinner, Friday night. Should I skip my snack before I go?" And my answer is always no. I want you to eat your mid-afternoon snack. Even if it's only an hour before dinner, I want you to eat it. That way you're not starving. Your blood sugar's in a much better position. That way when you get there, you can actually make a mindful decision and you're not just basing it on low blood sugar and needing something, because we usually make less desirable decisions when our blood sugar is low, we're so hungry, and we didn't necessarily think through the menu process beforehand.
And if you do get full halfway through your meal, you can always box it up and save it for later.
Exactly. And that's one strategy. I mean, I personally do this, but as soon as I get my meal, I cut everything in half, box the other half for later. That way I'm not tempted to
Mhm.
overeat. And I have a lot of clients that have started doing that as well because, some people growing up, they were taught, well, you don't leave the table until you finish your plate. Makes it easier if you only have half your food there to finish.
And if you look at the nutrition guidelines that's, available on some websites, associated with the restaurant or the menu, some of those main dishes are in excess of 1,000 calories. So, that
Mhm.
may not fit within a person's goals at that time.
Right. Exactly. And a lot of restaurant dishes, they're always higher in sodium, fat, and other additives that you may not necessarily use at home. So it's important to be mindful of that. If you know it's going to be a high salty meal, make sure you're focusing on hydration to help compensate for that extra sodium. Your body will retain some water because you're consuming excess amounts of sodium. So people get caught off guard when the scale goes up, even if they made a good choice and say, ate broccoli, chicken, and rice at the restaurant. It's all about, the little things, the added sodium, the extra fat that's in there. It adds additional calories. And so focusing on lean protein, you can always get your options like protein, particularly. You can get it cooked without butter or oil to reduce some of the fat. You can ask them for light seasoning. That way, you're cutting back on some of that sodium and just really hydrate during that meal and add some veggies for added fiber, and that helps with digestion. So, there's a couple things that you can do. It's not that you have to cut out restaurant meals completely, but it is important to be mindful of what's in those meals and just how to make better decisions.
I feel like going out to eat is like sodium. A little bit is good, but you can definitely have too much. There's times when we've been
Yes.
on the road, like traveling week after week, and we're eating out every single day. And at first, it's like, this is great. I do love going out to eat. But after a while, I mean,
Mhm.
I just crave healthier food, like under our control.
There's no better luxury than being able to cook meals at home, in my opinion. Like growing up, we ate out or we barely ate out. So it was always a luxury for me to go out to eat. But now that I have that choice to eat out whenever I want, I'd much rather do a home cooked meal, know exactly what I'm putting in my body, knowing what ingredients I'm using. To me, that is a huge
And for
luxury.
some people who don't enjoy cooking or perhaps don't, allocate time towards cooking, there are some great meal services, where you can kind of, control some of the macros that you're wanting to be getting. So those are options other than just eating in a restaurant every single day. You can kind of bring that more into your home and, control it a little bit more.
100%. I do have some clients that don't cook at all, and that's usually what we do. I'll look at meal prep companies in their area, delivery services, and then I just help them build quick and easy snacks to kind of fill in the gaps between those meals.
Nice. Okay, here's one from Lisa.
She says, "My biggest struggles when it comes to nutrition are meal planning and reaching for nutritional food during training because as we all know, marathon training makes you hungry. Any feedback around these would be appreciated."
Yeah, I'd say the best advice that I can offer is to plan ahead and make meal prepping a habit and a priority. I encourage all of my clients to do this, whether you're an athlete or a sedentary person that sits on the couch all day. It will help save you time and money in the long run, but it also helps keep you on track way better than trying to wing it each meal. I know we've all been there before where we're really hungry, there's nothing to eat, we're too tired to cook. So what do? We order takeout, we grab something quick, or we just snack on something that isn't very nutritious or fulfilling. And then we end up with blood sugar issues, our energy's drained, and we just grab whatever's easiest, whatever we can find in the pantry. It's usually not the most desirable choices.
I've definitely done the popcorn dinner before, and it's, yeah, not ideal.
Same. I've been there with the cereal. Like, well, a bowl of cereal's quick. I'll get some protein with milk. But again, if I would prep ahead, I don't have to worry about that.
So, yeah, the things that you bring into your home are very important when it comes to having nutritional food to reach for. And like you said, planning ahead with having meals because, if you leave it to when you're tired and super hungry, it's really hard to have the willpower to make good decisions.
Cook up a bunch of
Yep.
protein like once a week and just have it on hand to eat.
Then if you
Yeah,
then if
there
you
you go. And buy some frozen
Yeah.
stuff.
Then if you have teenagers, the meat that you cooked for the next 3 days will be gone in 12 hours, and then you will be back to square one.
Yep. Yep. It happens. Thankfully, I'm not there yet with a teenager, and my 3-year-old doesn't know how to go in the fridge and go get what I prepped. So we're not there yet, but I do always encourage like quick and easy protein options. Like if you shop at Costco, they have these little like pre-packaged, pre-cooked chicken breasts. It's 3 ounces, and I think there's like 12 or 15 little containers. You can freeze them. You can keep them in the fridge for a couple weeks. I throw those into everything.
Wow.
That's really smart.
I'll have to look for that.
Hmm.
And you're right, Lisa. Marathon
Yeah.
training does make you hungry. I've heard that from many people. We've lived that and
Yep.
experienced that. Here's a question from Daryl. He says, "My biggest nutritional struggle is the cravings at the end of the day before bedtime. My weakness is anything chocolate. So it'd be helpful to get some ideas on replacement snacks or ways to avoid snacks completely. Other than that, I've been able to stop alcohol and cut back on carbs for several months now." Well, congrats on that, Daryl. So,
Yeah, that's awesome, Daryl. One thing to note, typically if you're struggling with cravings, especially in the evening, a lot of times it can stem from several different factors. It could be that you're not consuming enough calories throughout the day, you're consuming inadequate protein, fat, or fiber throughout the day. Your blood sugar might be dysregulated, sleep is disrupted. You might even have nutrient deficiencies, or your meal timing might just need a little fine tuning, because all of those things can disrupt your blood sugar and your appetite hormones. And when those are thrown off, it can send weird signals to our brain. So I would focus on meal timing and meal composition to make sure that your blood sugar is more stabilized throughout the day to see if that helps. It's not that you necessarily need to cut out snacks completely because there is a huge benefit if you're snacking on the right foods at the right time and really just emphasizing that blood sugar stabilization. So I know a lot of my clients have active social lives. But yes, it's important to find snacks that stabilize blood sugar, have protein, and fiber is always a good benefit too. So if you're hungry at night and you're craving a little something sweet, try doing something like Greek yogurt and blueberries or mixed berries. You could do cottage cheese and berries or cottage cheese and nuts, something that is going to be fulfilling and nutrient dense, but it's not going to add a ton of carbs or excess sugar.
That's excellent advice. I know I struggle at times with chocolate cravings, especially at the end of the day. And if I know that I've, eaten my meals, I've gotten enough protein, often what I keep in the house is like 90% dark chocolate because it's really hard to overdo it when there is, so little sugar in it. So just maybe a square of that kind of just helps satisfy that chocolate craving. If I'm kind of thinking like maybe I didn't get enough protein, sometimes I'll have like a chocolate protein shake, and so I'm kinda like hitting that
Mm-hmm.
chocolate note as well as the protein, if I don't wanna eat a meal or make anything that's, too filling. So those are a couple things that I like to do. And then usually after that, I just like brush my teeth and floss and like do all the mouth routine. And then it
Yep.
kinda decreases my desire to have to repeat that if I eat something else. So
100%. And I love the idea of the chocolate protein shake. A lot of times what I like to do too is I'll make like a protein hot chocolate. I love to have something
Mhm.
warm at night after dinner, and that just hits the spot, takes care of the sweet cravings. So yeah, you can definitely use some protein shakes just for added protein, and it kind of curbs those sweet
Yeah.
cravings.
I mean, dark chocolate is just legit good for you, right? I've heard that. It's healthy.
In small amounts, in small amounts. I think everything can fit into your diet in moderation. Dark chocolate is one of those. I am not getting rid of dark chocolate, so I wouldn't encourage anyone else to, especially if it makes you happy. As long as you're not overdoing it.
Right.
It's funny too, once you start eating dark chocolate, how it starts to taste sweet, even if it's 80%, sometimes 90%. And then you try to eat milk chocolate, and it's like, what is this garbage?
Right. It tastes so
Yeah.
different after you're used to dark chocolate.
I also found that, back in the day when I started marathon training and being careful about what I was eating, I would drink a lot of creamer in my coffee. I would drink like that French vanilla creamer that you get from the store. And then I heard someone on a podcast talking about, small changes and just try cutting out creamer. I'm like, I can't drink coffee without creamer. So I switched to like milk, like a fatty milk, and then did that for a while. And now I just drink it black, and I can't imagine going back to like a sugary creamer. But
Oh
my
my
taste have
gosh.
changed. It's cool.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to try that because I've tried going to black coffee, I don't know how many times, and yeah, my creamer's been a non-negotiable. But I do choose a better creamer option, but I just can't
Try,
do black
try
coffee.
heavy whipping cream, just a little bit.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
try that. Yeah, I'll try it. I'll report back.
I realize that I don't like coffee really without, stuff in it. So I'm like, I'm just going to do green tea because, you know, coffee is not for me. I don't really enjoy it without a bunch of other stuff in it. So
That's a non-negotiable for me. My coffee, I have to have it. I have 2 cups every day.
All right, let's talk about fueling. Always a popular topic when we have Amber on the podcast. We're talking about fueling for various challenges. This is from Chris. He says, if you're in a long event like a marathon or an ultra, what are early signs that you may be under fueling? He goes on, in those moments, what are solutions to quickly rebound? For example, in a 50K I ran last year, I noticed I was getting little headaches before I hit the aid stations. I had a fueling plan, but these headaches would happen, so I drank soda and ate snacks at the aid stations in addition to what I had planned. This would help, but after some more miles, the headaches would return just before the aid stations, and I'd repeat the process. So yeah, that's no fun. 50K is hard enough. You don't want to get headaches. So yeah, it could be
Yeah.
related to fueling. Any thoughts on this question?
Yeah. So headaches in general are typically one of the first signs of dehydration. And stopping at the aid stations, there's always hydrating fluids there. I would stay away from the soda. It will add trivial amounts of hydration to your body, but it's not going to be nearly as hydrating as water or electrolytes or a mixture that has carbs and electrolytes. So leave the soda out. It'll give you a quick burst of sugar, and that's it. You want to focus on those more hydrating beverages to prevent the headaches. And then there are a lot of other early indicators of underfueling. And a lot of times they're ignored or disregarded, or people just don't think of them as being a sign of not consuming enough fuel or not hydrating enough. But sudden fatigue, muscle weakness, your pace slowing down, lightheadedness is a big one, shakiness, confusion, chills. I mean, the list goes
your
on. Your heart rate can
your mood taking
increase,
a turn for the
muscle
worse.
cramps. Exactly. You start thinking about, like, why the hell did I do this race? Like, worst decision ever. And you really just have a hard time getting out of that mindset at that point. And you might even have nausea or vomiting, which is probably the worst thing that could happen. Or you could even pass out or not even finish the race. So I don't know what I was saying. For marathons, I always say to aim for at least 30 to 60 grams of carbs per hour. And if you're doing a longer race, such as an ultra, you might need more, 30 to 90 grams per hour, depending on the race duration and intensity, as well as how quickly your body metabolizes those carbs. We all have a different metabolism, so it's really important to test these things well before a race or an event to make sure that you are giving your body enough depending on how quickly it burns through the energy. And don't forget that when you're starting a race, you're going to have some pre race jitters. You're going to have some extra nerves and adrenaline. That's going to burn through your energy a little bit quicker. And I always say to start early and consistent. It's always better to be proactive than reactive when it comes to your fueling, because once your energy levels drop, it is so much harder to recover and feel good the rest of the race. And then proper hydration is just as important as fueling. I know so many runners that they are hyper focused on the nutrition and what they're eating, but they neglect the hydration, and that takes them out of the race. So I would encourage at least 16 ounces of fluid every hour, along with electrolytes to prevent dehydration and to just provide optimal performance support.
And depending on, your sweat rate and the conditions of the race, the elevation, you may need more or less depending on a lot of those factors. And if it's a longer race
Mhm.
and you stop to use the porta pot and sometimes you feel like you have to go, but then nothing really will come out, that's probably a sign that you're underhydrating. So,
Yep.
obviously you don't want to be stopping to pee every hour. So there's a fine line between it.
Plus, also, if you look at your urine and it's really dark,
It's a little hard to look in a
Yep.
porta pot.
yeah.
I mean, if you're not a guy.
It
But
is.
isn't that
It
a
is.
sign
But you want to make sure
of underhydrating?
it is a sign. Yes, if you're able to see the color of your urine, absolutely use that. And you want to pay attention to that days leading up to the race too. If you're dehydrated before the race even starts, you're going to have a hard time playing catch up. And of course, after the race, you want to replenish everything that you lost. You're primarily going to lose sodium, but you'll also lose the other electrolytes. And you want to make sure that you're replenishing all of those. I know some people will just focus on having more sodium, but your potassium, magnesium, chloride, those are all important as well. So, consuming the right fueling after races, during races, I always have my clients start. I'm like, look, you're getting good hydration now, but we need to up it because your race is in 2 weeks. And they're like, yeah, but I have time. Not really. Because if you're dehydrated a couple days prior, you're going to feel it. You're not going to recover well either.
All right, let's go to some questions about protein. I had a lot of questions about protein. Um, would I skip one?
Yeah.
Okay. One more question about fueling. This is from Kirsten.
She says, I have recently started training for my first ever 50K, and the fueling has been tricky for me. Previously, I would have used a few gels, but I found that I don't love forcing them down, and the amount I would need for the amount of time I'm out there is a lot. I don't love eating real food during runs, but I'm considering that I may need to. Do you have any suggestions on nutrition for an ultra race that could last me 8 hours?
I always love this question because, yeah, you can get away with just gels during a marathon, but 50K, you're going to have to use some whole food nutrition, but there are some strategies that can help. So, if you relied solely on gels for an ultra, you'd probably consume so many that you'd probably be sick. It's just a quick way to ingest some sugar and carbs. I don't always recommend that. They will be beneficial to consume like throughout the race, but you want to have a good balance of gels, whole foods, and you can even use drink mixes to provide some carbs, electrolytes, and hydration. Um, and I would not just focus on the carbs. So I know that's kind of like the hot topic in intra run fueling or race fueling is getting enough carbs, but it's also important to have some small amounts of protein and fat throughout. That way, your blood sugar is more stable, you have more sustained energy levels. Versus if you're just consuming carbs, you're going to have lots of rapid spikes and declines in blood sugar, which doesn't always provide enough energy for you, or it affects how sustainable your energy is throughout that entire race. And that's a long race. So the more steady your blood sugar, the more steady your energy. And for those that don't like whole food, it can be really beneficial, but it's all about finding the right whole foods for you, things that you can get down easily, but also things that are nutrient dense. So, a lot of times, what I'll recommend to clients that just really struggle eating whole foods, get you some baby food pouches that are reusable from Amazon and blend up your own mixtures. So I always encourage like oats, banana, peanut butter, and some honey, or you can just blend up other things that work well for your body and your digestive system. A couple other solid food options would be things like homemade PB&Js, or you can buy the Uncrustables, salted mashed potatoes, pretzels, homemade energy balls. Applesauce pouches are great. There are some electrolyte smoothie pouches out on the market as well. You just want to focus on the density of the food to make sure it is going to provide you quick digesting carbs, but also sustainable energy. I know a lot of runners opt for using things like candy. While it will give you a good boost of energy, it's going to be very short. It's not going to be very sustained. So, the more you can focus on those nutrient dense foods, the better off you'll be further into the run. And then another thing I like to encourage too is like drink mixes. So, I know UCAN powder, it's a slow digesting carb. So, that provides really stable energy levels throughout. Morton has, I think it's called the Morton 320. It's a high carb, but it's really gentle on the stomach. Scratch Labs, Tailwind, those also provide some carbs and electrolytes. So if you're one that struggles to eat something, at least consume some fluids that are going to give you some adequate carbs in there too.
Yeah, it's a special person who can like eat more than 10 gels in a race,
Mm.
like in ultra.
Right. That's why everything's
Mhm.
individualized. I don't like to give specific recommendations because what works for me or what works for you isn't going to work for the next
Yeah.
person. And that's where some people, like when they come to work with me, they're like, "Oh, well, I was following what so and so said to do." But their digestive system was a wreck and they couldn't make it without going to the bathroom. I'm like, well, we got to find what works for you, your metabolism, your energy levels. Like, it's really important to test things out well ahead of time. Don't wait until a week before your race and then you're trying new things. Or I've had clients test new products at the race stations and it doesn't always go as they would expect. So test them out ahead of time, know exactly what you're going to use, know exactly what the timing will look like. And of course, you might have to make some little tweaks along the way, but it does help to have a general idea.
All right. Let's talk about protein.
Woohoo, I love
Yes, protein
protein.
is a very hot topic and a very important topic, one of the most important macronutrients you can get. This question is from Beth. She says, I'm a menopausal runner, and my coach says I need to get more protein. How can I increase protein in a heart healthy, nutritious way? Are protein powders and shakes healthy, or should I stick to natural foods?
I just want to say I listened to a story on NPR recently about how protein is having its day in the sun. Because, in the past, everyone talked about fats and talked about carbs. So now finally protein gets its turn.
Finally. No, there's so many good benefits to protein. Some people take it to the extreme, and that could be a negative thing too. I always say, like, too much of a good thing is still not a good thing. So make sure you're kind of finding what your body needs, just to
Hmm.
start that conversation. But I always like to recommend food first. And if you're eating a well balanced diet and still struggling to meet your protein needs, then supplements like protein bars and protein powders can be helpful. Um, for a heart healthy approach, it's good to stick with some of the plant based protein options. You're going to get a little less saturated fat that way. So things like beans, lentils, legumes, whole grains, those can be a great option. But I also like to have, like, if you're a meat eater, it's good to have a mix of both plant and animal proteins for optimal nutrition because you will miss out on some of the B vitamins or zinc if you're only consuming animal proteins. So you'll just want to make sure that you have a good mixture of both if you consume both. And if you're vegetarian or vegan, make sure that you do have a high quality protein powder that can help fill in the gaps if you are struggling to meet it through whole foods.
I think most people are under consuming protein, especially I would say as an athlete gets older, it's harder for the body to digest the protein. Obviously, muscle mass is more at risk as we get older. And so I think that most people, if they did an audit of their diet, protein would probably come up a bit short. So
Yeah,
um,
I'm guilty of that.
it's tough to eat too much protein from real food sources, honestly, for me.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it can definitely be challenging. And if you're a plant-based eater, it's even more challenging.
Mhm.
yeah, that's the annoying part is it's so easy to eat carbs. There's like 1,000 options. And fat is
Yep.
delicious. You got cheese and bacon and all kinds of stuff, dairy. Uh, but protein, it's like, what is there that's easy to snack on? You maybe have like a handful of things.
Right. The list is definitely much shorter.
Yeah. That's why I think people are not getting it. It's harder to keep protein snacks on hand. and to have that many and have a variety of protein snacks, because you can maybe be
Hmm.
eating jerky, but pretty soon you're getting tired of it. After a year of eating the same
Yeah.
jerky, it's like, let's try a different protein
And
source.
it's hard not to get too much sodium with the
Right.
jerky and,
Right. I was going to say eating too much jerky also leads to consuming too much other things that you don't necessarily want.
Yeah, there's sugar in
Um,
a lot of that stuff
one
too.
thing there's very few brands that don't have any added sugar, so you just gotta, know what you're looking for on the nutrition label. Now, cottage cheese is also having its time in the sun right now too. So if you're struggling to get your protein in, you can add cottage cheese to so many different things. You can make pancakes, waffles, scrambled eggs.
Oh, you're
So
kidding.
just thought I'd throw that out there because when I tell my clients what I do with cottage cheese, they're like, wait a minute, you put cottage cheese in what? And so I'll tell them some ideas and then they start hitting their protein goals a lot easier.
Well, what about the taste?
It really does not affect the taste. I made some pancakes the other day and they tasted so
Okay, you just
good.
mixed it
And
into
they
the
had,
batter. It's not like you're topping your pancakes with the cottage cheese.
right. I mean, you could do that if you wanted, but I do recommend blending it. That way it's smooth and your pancakes don't come out chunky. But it really doesn't change the taste whatsoever. I even made a pizza crust with just cottage cheese and seasoning the other day, and my husband was like, "Where'd you get this dough?" I was like, "Well, it's just cheese and I made it." So it's really surprising once you start, experimenting with different foods like that, it becomes a little bit easier to hit your protein goals,
Hmm.
using things like cottage cheese, Greek yogurt. You can mix those into a bunch of different options to add more variety.
Wow.
I have whenever I
Yeah.
have a baked potato, which is not too frequently, but I like to top it with cottage cheese instead of sour cream. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
protein.
Wait,
Exactly. You can also use plain Greek yogurt and it kind of has that sour cream taste too.
Mhm.
So add a little cottage cheese, a little Greek yogurt, and you've got a high protein baked
okay, so
potato.
does cottage cheese actually taste good on a baked potato, Angie?
I like it. I mean, I like cottage cheese. Cottage cheese is a polarizing thing. So I feel like some people are put off by
Yeah.
the taste, some people are put off by the texture of it. So you can puree it if, you don't like the texture and the taste is not an issue. You can
Yep.
disguise it if the taste is the issue.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much you can do with
Hmm.
it.
So yeah, if you're a person who eats dairy, then that can be a great little hack right there.
100%.
Okay.
You got to give cottage cheese its moment.
This episode is brought to you by cottage cheese.
I love it.
Yeah, not just not a cottage cheese brand, just cottage cheese the category. They're paying us.
That's
Oh,
right.
if only.
Um,
Right?
okay, here's another question about protein, and this is from David.
And we hit this a little bit earlier, but he says there is a lot of information about protein for athletes. Some say to eat as much as zero point 0.7 grams to 1 gram per pound of body weight to maximize muscle adaptation when exercising. If you do this, are you sacrificing other components of your diet or even putting yourself at risk of side effects? Is there a downside to eating too much protein?
Yep, another moment for protein. And this is where it gets really confusing. A lot of people are like posting on social media that you should aim for 1 gram per pound of body weight. And if you're over a certain body weight, you should aim for 1 pound per gram, or yeah, 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. However, if you use those calculations, depending on your actual body weight, you could end up with some really large numbers. So if you're 300 pounds and you're trying to hit 300 grams of protein per day, like that is a large amount. That's going to be really hard to hit, first of all. Second of all, who wants to eat that much protein? Like, protein's great and all, but you'd have to eat multiple pounds of chicken or beef or lots of beans to hit that
Mhm.
amount. And so, what I typically recommend, and it all depends on other factors like training goals, your overall diet, what you're really looking to do in terms of body composition, but anywhere from 1.2 to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight is what I like to use. And it also, like, protein's essential, but more isn't always better. And the same goes for vitamins, minerals, any macronutrient. Just because you're consuming a lot of it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good thing for your body. There's some mixed research where some shows that excess protein isn't harmful for those that have healthy kidneys, while there are some indicators that show prolonged overconsumption of extra protein may add extra strain on the kidneys. So, consuming more protein could also put you at risk of displacing fats and carbs. So, you might end up with some nutrient imbalances. And that's typically what I see. If someone's really consuming an excess amount of protein, they're typically low carb or they're having enough carbs but not enough fat. So it's good to find that balance of carbs, protein, and fat because all three are super essential. They're essential for a reason. That means our body cannot necessarily make enough of what we need each day. So just take that with a grain of salt. Try to use your kilograms per body weight, not your per
And is
pound.
that kilograms of body weight of your current body weight or ideal body weight?
Current body weight, unless you are in the overweight or obese category. And I don't even like to use that, the BMI, because it doesn't factor in your muscularity or activity levels. But it's recommended that if you're overweight or obese, you would use your ideal body weight and still use
Okay,
kilograms.
that's very helpful.
Hmm. Okay, and finally, we have a question about creatine. This is from Sue. She says, explain creatine and how it affects us. Should runners be taking supplemental creatine? And does age matter in this?
I also love this question because creatine is kind of having its moment with protein and cottage cheese. A lot of people are really getting on board with creatine, which I personally love to see. So our bodies naturally produce creatine, and it makes it through three specific amino acids and their corresponding enzymes. And you can also get creatine in small amounts through some of your animal based protein sources, but not your plant based. So if you're vegetarian or vegan, you're not really getting any creatine through your diet, but your body is still synthesizing very small amounts. But this is why supplementation can be so beneficial. And in my experience, creatine can be especially beneficial for runners, especially if you are incorporating strength training and high intensity workouts. Because for runners, it can boost your sprint performance, it reduces your muscular inflammation and muscle damage, it prevents muscle breakdown. So if you're in a calorie deficit and you're burning a ton of calories by running, you want to prevent as much muscle loss as possible, and creatine can help with that. And then creatine is also really good at helping those muscle cells retain water to avoid dehydration. So if you're already taking creatine and you feel that your muscles are just really full, that's because those cells actively pull in water and they need simple carbs to help do that. So whenever you're taking creatine, you want to have it either with a meal or with like a juice or something that has some sugar in it. That way, your muscles can actively absorb that creatine. And typically, creatine is considered to be very safe. It's the most well studied supplement out there. And unless you have any underlying kidney issues, then they usually say that it's pretty safe to take. And there's a lot of myths around creatine where you have to do like a loading phase or you have to cycle on and off of it. But research has shown that those are just myths. You don't have to do that. You can avoid the loading phase and just do 5 grams per day. You do want to time it around your workouts if you can, but the most important thing is that you're taking it every single day. And I'll hear this a lot. Oh, well, I only take it on the days that I train. Well, you probably won't get the full benefits of it because your muscles can only store so much creatine at one time. So each day you're needing to replenish that unless you're eating pounds of red meat and chicken or fish every day, then you'll want to supplement to help those muscles replenish the creatine. Um, and then now, like with menopause being such a big topic too, they're showing that creatine is especially beneficial for women because we already lose muscle mass at a quicker rate during this stage of life. And creatine can help slow that loss. And it's also got a lot of good cognitive benefits. So they're showing that it reduces the risk of Alzheimer's disease and reduce mental fatigue. So that's really helpful for runners. It helps you make better decisions as a runner. So in my opinion, it's kind of like that number one supplement that's out there. And I think more people are getting more on board with taking it, but I assume that we'll kind of see that grow over the next couple years too.
Awesome.
Angie, are you on board with it?
I am. I take creatine most every day. I mean, I probably forget once a week maybe. It's easier for me to take right after I work out, and so if I,
Hmm.
my rest day, sometimes I forget on my rest day, but yeah, I'm definitely super on board with it.
Good. I love to hear that. Do you take it, Trevor?
I maybe took it once this year so far.
The answer is no.
The answer is no. Yeah. But no, I highly encourage it. I take it. And like I said, I would speak with your doctor first just in case there are some underlying issues. But typically, it's considered safe. You can see some really great benefits from it, but it does take consistency. You can't just take it once and expect your muscles to be nice and full and really strong. You got to take it every day. Some studies even show that women have to take it for a minimum of 28 days to see any benefits from it because we already have less muscle mass naturally than men. So it just takes longer for our muscles to kind of build up that storage to be
Yeah.
beneficial.
Well, can you give us an idea of like some of the goals that you are helping your clients with, like when it comes to their metabolism?
Yeah. So when it comes to the metabolism, oftentimes I see people are under eating or just not eating the right composition of meals. And what that does is it throws off blood sugar, which impacts your metabolism and your energy levels and your body's ability to burn fat efficiently. So, what I like to do is, we go through an initial phase where I see how their body and their metabolism respond to small changes in their macros. And then from there, once we kind of reach this bottom line where the scale's not moving, they're not seeing any changes in body composition, then we go into what we call as a revving cycle at MetPro. And that's where I'll slowly increase their intake, specifically using more carbs if possible. I might increase fat and protein as well, but that just helps build metabolic efficiency because your metabolism will always chase your intake. So if you are consistently eating a low calorie diet, your metabolism will down adjust to acclimate. Our bodies are very efficient at finding homeostasis and they don't like change. So, anytime that you're trying to build muscle or lose body fat, your body is going to be a little resistant, especially if you've chronically dieted or if you've really conditioned your body and trained for many years. You're going to have to do things that change it up and really challenge your metabolism to do something different. So that's what we do at MetPro. We really work on improving your metabolic rate while helping you focus on whether your goal be fat burning or building lean muscle or a little bit of both, preparing for races, whatever it may look like. We want you to be in the best metabolic state that you can be.
Awesome. And of course, at MTA, we want you to be in the best training state. So we have coaches that structure training for marathon, ultra marathon, all kinds of challenges. We want to make sure that people avoid um, injury and burnout, overtraining, that they're getting the most bang for their buck when it comes to their marathon training plan, that they're using the right strategies for conquering the long run, for executing on race day, pacing, all that good stuff. But one thing that we've never done is like offer nutrition coaching because that's kind of beyond our scope. But now we've got a partnership with MetPro. So uh, if you're listening and you've thought about working with MetPro, working with an MTA coach, now you can have two for the price of one. Essentially, you're going to be saving $200 a month because you sign up as a MetPro client. You're going to get MTA coaching included. So you'll have two coaches working with you, looking under the hood, keeping you accountable, answering questions, getting you to your goals. It's like that rocket boost. We've got two rockets now boosting you up. And to learn more about that, uh, we only have it for the first 30 people. It's something that we're just experimenting with. So jump on in if you are interested. You can go to metpro.co/MTA to talk to them over that MetPro, and we'll get you going. Anything else I can add that I left out, Amber?
No, I think this was great. Like I said, this is a partnership that's been a long time in the making, and it's going to be so beneficial for those 30 people that get to take advantage of this. You're really going to get to put the right fuel in your vehicle and maintain it all with the help of us coaches at MTA and MetPro. So I'm really excited for it.
Definitely. Well, yeah, head over to metpro.co/MTA. Coach Amber, always great to talk to you. Thanks for answering these questions. Thank you to everyone that sent in a question. Of course, we had way more than we had time to get to, but hopefully this was a big help to all of you. And just know that, everyone's dealing with some kind of struggle. I think of the question about how someone's hungry all the time during marathon training. That's definitely a struggle that it's common, or get enough protein, menopause issues. And these are all things that, a metabolic coach can help you dial in. So big thanks to everyone who sent in a question, and thanks to everyone listening to the episode. Uh, Amber, last year when we had you on the show, it was the most downloaded and streamed episode on Spotify, according to Spotify Wrapped. So
That was awesome. I love to hear that, but it doesn't surprise me because so many people have nutrition questions and they're really trying to up their game when it comes to fueling and performing better.
yeah,
So hopefully this episode is just as helpful, and I'm sure I'll be back soon.